Ladies and gentlemen, here is a message on sustainability from Michel.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm very pleased to have with us the chairman of Zurich Insurance, Michel, who has kindly agreed to speak with me today to open the panel discussion on insurers' strategies for enhancing sustainability. A little bit of background on Michel. Michel has over 40 years of experience in global insurance and reinsurance on both the life and the property and casualty insurance sides. Swiss Re has been very lucky to have Michel spend a large part of his career with us. He started his career at Swiss Re in 1978, working first in the life market in Latin America, and spent the next 38 years with us before his retirement in 2016 as Group CEO of Swiss Re. During his tenure at Swiss Re, Michel was known for his passion in sustainability and as well as his role in establishing our public sector solution, a team that has gone on to be the pioneer in insurance solutions in both emerging and developed insurance markets. So welcome, Michel. It is our great honor to have with us today.
Thank you. It's also an honor for me to be invited in such a meeting, which is very important in my view.
Sustainability is a very broad topic. There are many ways to consider sustainability, from environmental, social to business and industry. And the role of insurers in driving a more sustainable future is unique and significant. So to kick off today's discussion, can I ask you an equally broad question? What does sustainability mean to you?
It's effectively a broad question. I like to say that if the word insurance wouldn't exist, probably we could apply sustainability to define what we are doing. For me, sustainability is simply the way in which you make sure that any kind of initiative, be it an individual one or a collective one, is not interrupted by disruptive moment. Make sure that the people launching an initiative, the people having an idea, come to the end and some achievements, and are definitively, if I may say, compensated by their efforts in the way their efforts is evolving to a results. So sustainability can be applied to individuals and to their project, their individual project, can be applied to collectivity. And let's not forget the last collectivity, which is humanity. So collectivity as humanity needs definitively also a level of sustainability. We're all living on the same planet. And that's the moment in which I do believe that sustainability makes an enormous sense. And I think we need to make sure that we also keep a balanced view between the environmental dimension of sustainability and the social environment. We're all living on the same planet. It's very nice to aim at a green planet, and it's definitely it makes sense that we need to be very, very careful about the environment, but we need also to be very careful about the social evolution, because a lot of the projects in the past have been interrupted because of social disruption. So the ES, of course, the G is important, the governance, but the E and the S need to be balanced. And I sometimes get the impression that some of the tension that we experience are simply due to the fact that we probably put a lot of emphasis on the E, forgetting a little bit the S. And I think we need to make sure that both are well balanced. But to finish, for me, sustainability is simply life. Make sure that you have a sustainable life, and it makes sense for collectivity, it makes sense for individual, but we need to make sure that everybody, collectively or individually, has the result that his initiative or his or her initiative deserve, and that's for me sustainability.
Yes, that definitely resonates a lot. And from hearing from you, there's definitely a role to play for the insurance industry. So you've seen the transformation of the industry in the past 40 years. Where do you think the industry currently stands in terms of sustainability?
I think the industry has been, and probably the company that you represented, that I had the honor to drive for a while, has been quite active there in trying to make sure that the numbers are numbers on which we all agree. I think it's important in this phase in which there are some people who have some doubts to make sure that we try to introduce a level of neutrality in the definition of the problem. And that's the way in which we can address the problem. So I'm convinced that the industry has evolved quite nicely during the last 4 years. For us in the industry, the facts are there. So there is no way to negate the facts. Then, of course, on the facts, you can add the famous question, is it a blip? Is it a trend? But for us, as we have to survive each year paying the claims that results or from climate events, definitively, is it a blip? Is it a trend? Is an important question, but actually not the immediate question we have to answer. And that's something that the industry is definitively looking at with a lot of intensity. So we are the first industry probably touched by the results of something which is resulting from not taking care of climate and sustainability. And therefore, I think the evolution has been a natural one. And I do see the current situation as a kind of acid test of our conviction. If we are convinced of what we are doing and convinced of the evolution of what we are addressing and the famous balance between short term and long term, I do believe that the fact that some people do negate that things are happening is a nice acid test for some of us. If everybody is agreeing, you cannot test the conviction of the people. When you start to have people who disagree, then you can test the conviction. But one of the key contributions for me, for the industry, being an industry which is placed within the financial sector and therefore enjoys a certain credibility, and an industry which is really exposed to the result of not taking care of sustainability, is introduce a certain level of objectivity when we speak about the numbers, and introduce also clarity about the conclusion of the decision we take, but probably more important, the conclusion of the decision we do not take. And that's something for which I do believe, even we have not been elected. There are some politicians who are elected or decided in countries to drive some of this debate, but I think we can contribute massively to this debate.
Yeah, and speaking of disagreement, and the topic of sustainability has certainly become increasingly controversial. So from legislation against companies pursuing ESG goals on one hand, to the public shaming of insurers for not moving fast enough on oil and gas on the other, the debate is becoming increasingly politicized and polarized. So how do you think this will steer or change the course of the industry's sustainability journey?
I think we need to keep a balanced view. On one side, you have people negating what is happening. On the other side, you have activists who want to see things changing from one day to the other. We all know that it cannot change from one day to the other. I think there is an enormous interest by the people to hear the truth now. So it's probably very important for us to also say the truth, even if the truth is probably negating some of the target that we had in mind 5 years ago and 10 years ago, which are probably partly unachievable, taking into account the evolution that we had recently. But I strongly believe that the way in which we bring truth, the way in which we discussed openly about the evolution, the transition, is very, very important. I also meet sometimes activists, and I share their interest in having flashy announcements. But I must say, we try to be as clear as we can. And I prefer to say the truth and to say to express really our policy about underwriting, but clearly taking into account that there is a transition which is needed, instead of making a flashy announcement with 12 footnotes explaining that what is flashy in the announcement is maybe not as flashy. And I think people are really very, very interested in getting the truth. And that's the best way in which I think we can contribute in the current debate, which is getting, in my view, a little bit too religious, if you allow me, and a little bit less technical. And that's something I regret. And that's the famous balance between short-term and long-term. Of course, there are short-term temptations in which you can make a lot of money by betting on things which on the long term do not make a lot of sense. And I think we need to have also the courage to speak about the balance between long term and short term. I do not pretend that losing money on the short term is the best way to earn money on the long term. I do simply pretend that there are some short-term bets which may be dangerous, but we should contribute to the objectivity of the debate. The debate is getting massively subjective, and that's a sad story in my view.
Indeed. So do you have any advice for insurance companies who are looking to establish their strategy on sustainability?
first, I'm very modest, in kind of giving advice to any insurance company has their own strategy. By the way, any company has their own strategy. So any kind of advice is something which is quite dangerous. But I believe that there is a piece of the evolution of the insurance industry which can make sense, which is trying to avoid being only there to compensate financially the bad results of something that happens, but trying to prevent these things to happen. And that's, for me, the key debate of sustainability. We are not there only to pay the results of what happens financially, but we should contribute as much as we can to try to avoid what is happening. So make sure that in the insurance industry, the prevention is also something which is important. Then do not be shy in provoking. And then the last element, which for me is important, there are a few new initiatives in matters of technology who can represent a piece of the solution. I do not belong to the category of people believing that technology will save us from any kind of decision that we do not take, but there are definitely some interesting technological evolution. And I think it's very important for the insurance industry to probably jump a little bit of our own shadow. And sometimes, even if we don't have all the actuarial data on some of these initiatives, but give some insurance support of some of these initiatives, because I think it's very, very important. Some initiatives will probably not take off simply because they do not enjoy financing or insurance cover. So let's make sure that we also contribute to these aspects. So again, be clear about our contribution, be it on the underwriting side, be it on the insurance, on the investment side. Let's recognize also that even if we are not a mining company as insurer, we have a tendency to travel quite a lot. So let's make sure that we also look at our own operations, but also balance our action in trying to change some of the behavior of our clients. And to be honest, the majority of our clients haven't expected us to change the behavior, but also bring some insurance know-how in the evolution of technology, which can be in some cases also participating to the solution. I do not think that technology will solve everything, but I do believe that technology is an important element. So balancing these two elements is important. So in a way, it's also balancing the kind of teaching element to a kind of risking element for us to properly dare to also ensure a few initiatives which are not enjoying all the statistical data that we normally as insurer enjoy before delivering a cover.
So any final words that you would like to share with the audience?
Well, I think that the insurance industry is at a key moment in that respect. There is, in the current environment, and again, I do accept it's probably a little bit a Westerner view. I think that a lot of the parts of the world do see what did happen in the last 50 years as something fantastic. They left poverty to go to a very, very promising future. But there are definitely a lot of risks on this planet. There are a few risks on which we cannot do a lot, which are the geopolitical risks, which are sometimes resulting for not taking care enough of the S of the ESG. But there are so many risks on this planet that it's probably the moment in which the insurance industry can demonstrate within the financial service industry probably the famous added value that we can bring. We have a tendency to be very discreet compared to some of our peers within the financial service industry. I deeply believe that it's the moment in which we should have the courage to simply pledge about the added value that we can bring, to pledge about the way in which we as insurer can probably extend our cover to a place in which it doesn't belong. So it's probably a key moment for the insurance industry to dare to say what are the added value that it can bring, to demonstrate it and to act, instead of simply like we have a tendency sometimes to be, I don't want to make any joke about the actuaries, but to be very discreet and making our business discreetly. I think it's time to be open. It's time to really let people understand the fantastic added value that it can bring to many of the problems that this planet is facing. We do not solve everything, but we can contribute to a lot of solution in many aspects. And I will conclude by my famous pledge on we should have somebody taking care of risk at each level in the governments. And I remember it has been a long task. We always try to convince the government to have some so-called country risk managers or country risk minister. We haven't achieved a lot of success there, but I still continue to pledge that it would be fantastic to have somebody taking care of the risk of any political decision, and that would be a fantastic conversation partner for the insurance industry.
So thank you for joining us, Michel. I wish we had more time to dive a little deeper into some of the points that you have raised. But despite the length of our conversation, I believe this brief but insightful conversation has set a very good and solid stage for our panel discussion. So now let's hear from our panelists. Thank you.
Thank you very much.